Good morning, everyone. I'm Craig Megan. You're tuning in to the Nationals daily live stream on the day of the council elections. I'm joined by my colleague Steph Braun. Yeah,
Everyone,
how are you doing, Steph?
not too bad. It's an exciting day. Always good when everyone's heading to the polls and things. So it should be an exciting sort of couple of days from now.
And have you cast your ballot yet? Or are you going to do that after work?
I'm gonna do it after work. I was in a bit of a rush this morning, so fully intend to vote when I get off the train later.
Yeah,
What
even
about
with home
yourself?
working. Yeah, even with home working, I didn't squeeze in the time to get over to the polling station before work. But yeah, I mean, and that's what we're leading with on our front page. Yeah, the council elections.
Yeah, so you'll see on our front page today, fairly self-explanatory. We're talking about the local elections. The polls opened at 7 a.m. today, and they're open till 10 p.m. So you've got plenty of time to cast your vote. I think one of the key messages on the front page is what you'll see is "vote till you boke," which you might not really know what that means. It's the voting system that is used in council elections is called the single transferable vote, and it's where you rank candidates by preference from one to however many you want to. Really, but what we're saying is it's really important to rank every single candidate on your ballot paper. You could easily go in there and just put a 1 or a 1 and a 2 and leave the rest of them blank. But it's really important to rank everyone, whether you like a candidate or you don't, because the way that it works is basically every candidate has a quota to hit. And once they've hit that quota, they will get a seat on the council. So it could be that by the time your ballot is opened, your number one candidate already has enough votes. So instead of your vote being wasted, your number one candidate will simply transfer to whoever you've put as number two. So if you haven't put anybody as number two in the bin, your vote is wasted. So if you rank as many candidates as possible, you're making sure that you're having a say on every single candidate and you're not leaving it to somebody else. So hopefully that makes some sense. It's a bit of a complicated voting system, but that's kind of what we think is really important, really, if you're heading out to vote today. Like I say, polls open till 10 p.m, so make sure you get out there. It's important to vote, isn't it, Craig?
It's very important to vote. I don't think you'll hear us saying otherwise, to be fair. Yeah, I mean, there's lots to sort of play for in this one. The Tories and then Labour, and then there's a few interesting council elections happening throughout the country as well. I mean, you've got Glasgow with SNP minority administration. I think there's only 5 councillors between Labour and the SNP, so sort of all to play for. With that, I mean, what are you looking out for today? Tomorrow?
I think that tomorrow is obviously when the count takes place. But there's a few interesting areas across Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. The big cities are always really interesting. Who's going to end up leading the council there? Like you say, Glasgow is currently in SNP minority administration, but I know that the Tories have gone quite hard at that, I think, in this campaign. So be interesting to see how that turns out. Other areas that are interesting is North Lanarkshire. The SNP narrowly missed out on taking control of North Lanarkshire in 2017. So it'll be interesting to see if they can now take control there. We've also got, it's been very interesting in the Western Isles, actually. That's a completely male-dominated council as it stands. So it'll be interesting to see if any women actually get onto that council. A bit of lack of diversity, I suppose, on that one over the years.
Yeah, I think there was a poll earlier, was there not, that showed I think only like a third of the candidates were women. And it was even, I think, it might have been even worse than in sort of a general election, a Scottish Parliament election, the amount of the number of women who are running.
Yeah, it's always a concern, particularly on councils. The spread of men to women. Other interesting areas to look out for. Dumfries and Galloway. There's always quite a big Tory vote there, so that's always an interesting one. And things like the Shetland Islands and Fife as well, Aberdeen as well. All these places are going to be potentially tight contests. So. But of course, it's not all about local elections. It's not the only thing we've got to talk about. Craig, you did a story today in today's paper, isn't it? About that you've done quite a lot on Ukrainian refugees, haven't you? What's your latest tale that you've got?
Yeah, so my latest story on Ukraine is sort of a criticism of the UK government and the Homes for Ukraine scheme generally. I spoke to two Scottish host families. There's one in West Lothian and one in Angus, and they've had similar issues that a lot of families have had, which they say it's just been a very dysfunctional system. It's just been one that's been sort of, riddled with sort of confusion. And I think, one man I spoke to called it a dysfunctional octopus, because essentially you've got all these you've got the DWP, you've got the Home Office, the Scottish Government, and then councils, and all of these departments have to work together to home these Ukrainian refugees. And what I was told was that just not enough support is being done, as conducted to help both the Ukrainians coming over as well as the host families, and that you really need to fight the corner for the Ukrainians. I mean, the UK has had a low number of Ukrainian refugees compared to other countries in Europe. Priti Patel said that was because essentially Ukrainians want to stay closer to their home. But parties such as SNP and the Scottish host families and Labour, they've disagreed with that totally and said it's more to do with the system in the UK, such as the visa system, which is very different from other places in Europe. So yes, sadly, what I'm hearing is just more of the same for weeks, which has been that the system is just apparently not very well organised, not well implemented, and it's quite different from what other countries appear to be doing as well.
Yeah, it's really concerning because obviously it's just awful what's going on over there at the moment, and we want to be part of trying to give these people a good home and just feel like they're going to somewhere safe. So I think it's adds to you're already fleeing a country in conflict, and to then face a bit of a bureaucracy, and it just adds to your anxiety, doesn't it, when you're not sure, who's dealing with what and what's going on. So, but it's been great stories that you've been doing, Craig, covering that issue. We've also got on our website and in the paper, Billy Kay has been talking about abuse that he received after speaking out about the Scots language, which is, really awful, isn't it? And I think he talked about how that had affected his kids as well.
Yeah, he did. So this is again sort of another ongoing story. It was last week, I think, he gave sort of an historic address at the Scottish Parliament, because he was the first person to give that address in Scots. And Scots is spoken by well over 1 million people, and even that's believed by some activists to be an underestimate. He did the speech, and the National was one of the publications who you got the clip and shared it on social media. And unfortunately, it was just hit with a barrage of abuse from people who said it was a made-up language, that it was embarrassing, things like that. And what he was saying, like, as a public figure, he's used to that to some degree, but then for his kids to read that sort of hatred against their father was pretty hard, And as I said, this has been ongoing. We've had multiple stories now about this speech, and then sadly the backlash that it's had, because the thing with the Scots language is, although it's recognised, by the Scottish Government and by the Labour administration under Tony Blair, recognised it, UNESCO recognises it, the EU recognises it as a language, it still appears to be this sort of issue that is cast to some degree along union lines for some reason, when I think a lot of activists are saying this isn't political, this isn't about your stance on independence or the UK. This is just how people live their lives, and whether you believe it or not doesn't change that.
Yeah, I honestly think we could do our own live stream about Scots and talk about it for about half an hour, because I think there's a real lack of understanding about it being an official language, even though, like you say, it's recognized as an official language by lots of bodies. And but I think, especially as a person who moved to Scotland 5 years ago, I think there's a real lack of understanding about the language that it is. So I think we could do a whole thing on that. we've only got a few minutes left, really. So we're just going to talk about a couple of other things. The story came out today about record Shell profits, even more pressure on the UK government to introduce a windfall tax. This follows on from BP also reporting giant profits earlier this week. Do you think, with every story, that the pressure is just increasing, Craig?
I mean, it does seem, because I think it was BP who already released these massive, like in the billions worth of profit, and then people
Insane,
were like, yeah, and it was like, a lot of the opposition parties were saying, okay, let's have a windfall tax because this comes at the exact same time as the cost of living crisis, which is in part due to skyrocketing energy bills, which just went up 54%. So this must heap pressure on the government, but they've been very resistant to the idea of a windfall tax. They say that if they, implement a windfall tax, that'll reduce investment in the UK and in places like the North Sea. I mean, that's obviously contested by opposition parties who agree with it, but that's their stance, and they don't appear to be budging. And what do you think the public mood is on this? Do you think, as we go through a cost of living crisis, most people are in favour of a windfall tax?
Yeah, I think most people are. I think, people who are struggling to put food on the table and then seeing the amount of money these energy companies are making is just like two different universes, really. And yeah, absolutely. I think that the general public will be in favour of, the energy companies paying their way, really. But like you say, yeah, the UK government seem very resistant and sort of, solid in their position. So I think it will definitely be an issue in people's minds when they're voting today as well. Even though it's a council election, national issues do come into people's minds a lot. But to wrap up with a couple of fun little stories we've been having, I think the first one is, I spoke to Gillian Mackay later on yesterday after we spotted her wearing a resistance badge, a Star Wars resistance badge in the chamber, which is great. It's just so impressive. It was May the 4th yesterday, of course, which is now globally known as Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you, if you don't already know. And Gillian spoke to me about her absolute obsession with Star Wars. I mean, yes, she was wearing a badge in Parliament. She had a Grogu bag on the way to work, but I didn't realize the extent of her love of Star Wars. It was amazing to chat about it. She's a green MSP for people that don't know. So you can read up on our chat online at thenational.scot. For any Star Wars fan, I recommend it because it's you'll be able to see what her favorite film is and her favorite characters. So it was a really, really funny chat. She's even got lightsabers in her office. So that's how far.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's always interesting when you find out this stuff about politicians. You're so used to seeing them obviously in a professional sort of manner that you don't consider that, they are also people who have hobbies and interests. And, it was nice. It was a nice story. I mean, Holyrood was delayed for a few minutes because of sound issues. So, and there was lots of back and forth between the party leaders. Council election is the day after. So it was a nice story. Yeah, it was. Are we going to talk about the ice cream?
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about the ice cream. So this picture came out yesterday. Was it today? It's.
I think it was a few days ago when Ruth Davidson was sort of on the campaign trail with Douglas Ross.
So here's Ruth Davidson, the former Scottish Tory leader, tucking into what looks like, is that strawberry, maybe? Raspberry ripple, perhaps? And then Douglas Ross, the current Tory leader, tucking into what we think is bubblegum ice cream.
I thought it was mint. Other people in the office think it's bubblegum. I stand by my mint, although it's not got chocolate chips, so maybe not.
That's true. It does kind of look blue, I think, rather than green, but I can see where you're coming from. But we're kind of open to, views on what you think Douglas Ross has gone for here. We've also had, I was thinking it might be a sort of raspberry slush puppy sort of flavor as well. So could be that.
Pistachio, maybe?
Pistachio, even.
What colour is pistachio?
Craig is definitely on the side that this is green ice cream, not blue.
That's because it is green.
Okay, great stuff. Well, I think that we've probably run out of time. So get out and vote today if you can. The ballots are open till 10, the polling stations. So just get out there and use your democratic rights, I would say.
Definitely. And if you're taking your dog to the polling station, if you're already taking a picture, please comment with all the dog pictures at the polling station. You can. We really want to see that. And if you want to read more about, updates at the council elections today and tomorrow, head over to thenational.scot. We'll have our journalist in Edinburgh, I think, and in Glasgow, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So, you'll get updates from the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you tomorrow, guys.